Very good morning to all the esteemed listeners. I hope you all are safe and doing great at your respective place. Uh, it's my privilege to launch Society for Data Science web series today. And in this series, we are going to call all the esteemed experts who are working in the domain of data. And the first one in this series is Dr. Debarshi Mukherjee, and he is going to talk on the topic learning continuity in the realm of Education 4.0. Let me take the honor to introduce Dr. Debarshi Mukherjee. He is an alumnus of Vishwa Bharati and Banasthali Vishwa Vidyapeeth. Both the institutions are very highly rated. He is an associate professor and head of department business management, Tripura University. His research interest lies in developing blending learning models and ICT intervention in tertiary education. He has also worked extensively in curricular design and innovative andragogy development besides teaching and academic administration over last 2 decades. His endeavor in research has earned him over 70 publications into various places like book, research paper, working papers, so on and so forth. His interest in research has led him to many funded projects sponsored by DEAR, NABARD, ICSSR, ONGC, and many more. He is also into consultancy for the clients like Manipal Global Education Services. He has delivered over 35 invited talks, so he is a veteran speaker, and we are fortunate to have him with us today. He has also organized many national and international events like conference, FDPs, leadership programs, and many others. So we are fortunate, as I said, we are fortunate to have him as our first speaker of this webinar series. So over to you there, Dr. Debarshi.
Thank you. So am I audible to all?
Yes, you are very clear.
Yeah, okay. So
and I have stopped sharing my screen. You can share your screen.
Yes. Thank you so much. And I welcome all the participants. I hope all of you are doing fine. And I'll start my session today. By the way, Dr. Neha, how much time do I have? Because I think we started a little late. If you I can time it out accordingly.
You have 40-50 minutes.
Okay, 40
and we will take few questions if at all they are there at the end.
Okay, fine. I'll time it out accordingly. So as we know, this particular situation, as we have been first upon compel us to think about the learning continuity. Now I'll give you the genesis. I'll spend 1 minute on that. How did we arrive on this particular topic? After this WTC bombing that happened in 9/11 in US, the corporate coined a term called business continuity. So therefore, is there any disruption? Is there any situation which is stopping the entire process? So under those trying conditions, how business can survive? Now the learning managers have adopted this term, and we are using this as a mechanism to foster ubiquitous continuous learning. And how you do that? Because today we are at a place where a lot of changes are happening. So learning management has evolved as a separate discipline today, which commands a lot of attention. So with that, I'll start with a couple of uncomfortable facts. I call them, because for my every lecture, I start with some facts and questions. So and the first is, I'll just, due to paucity of time, I'll quickly flip through these questions, and I'll ask you to think what these facts talk about. So the kind of students, I'm particularly, let me restrict the scope. I am particularly restricting myself to tertiary education because the paucity of time will not allow me to go beyond secondary and primary. So I'll stay in the domain of tertiary education primarily. So this is some of the studies which have shown, and very interesting facts, that this is the study which I'm referring to. It spanned across 140 countries, and it was having more than 250 business leaders who have seen that uh, the employability facts, and they have found that only 11% of the leaders, they think that the graduates are employable. I do not uh, deem that they are very much correct, but that is the report has come. So therefore, there's a gap between what we churn out as students and what industry accepts as a proper professional. Another interesting and important fact, that 65% of the primary school children will eventually land up in a job which does not exist. So the subjects that are being taught these days, so the teachers might not have been exposed to the subjects when they were students. So likewise, the entire paradigm is evolving. And another interesting fact, that NPA, in education alone, because the kind of expenditure people make in higher education is a very cost intensive proposition, and finally the return on investment they get out of those academic programs after pursuing of those programs, the return is pretty less. So that is the reason that they are unable to repay that loan, and it is increasing. And then one more interesting fact I'd like to draw attention towards, that the students are not getting placed. It is not that they are just not getting placed. Perhaps there is a gap between what they expect and what they land. So now I see there is a challenge in managing their aspirations. Now with this, we'll set the ball rolling, and I'll try to project on those factors. So what should be a modern classroom? I think we all talk about ICT intervention. So to me, or to many people, a modern classroom should look like this. So the question that comes, so I mean, we are in a data science forum. So is it that data that improves learning? That's what we are going to believe. So my contention is it's not. So now, I mean, we have many teachers in this forum on this session today. So there are a few questions which I'm going to ask, because usually we do not have that one-on-one discussion forum. But these questions are for you, for all of us to ponder upon when we are at our own space and think about them. So are the teachers, I mean, are we ready to acquire new skills which are required for the modern day? Very simple example, when this online classroom has started during this pandemic, I mean last 1.5 months, so there was a huge resistance in multiple institutions, and due to some reasons which are known, some unknown, people were not very much trained on that. So that was one kind of a resistance which people showed, that they didn't want to train. But that's not the true picture. There are many institutions, they have done it. Now this is very interesting question, that so if we are trying to develop the competency among students, so how do you hold them? Do we make them time constant, learning variable, or the other way around? So now what I'm trying to make a meaning out of here is, for any kind of learning, let's say a syllabus is being taught, a course is being taught. So do we believe that after the end of a particular time frame, the learning would be achieved, or we reverse the complete cycle? So now this is a very interesting question. And if we agree to the fact that time cannot be held constant, a learning, is learning has to be a variable thing, and time cannot be held constant, which means that learning, we are accepting to the fact learning is a non-linear thing, non-linear propagation. And then the third interesting question is that when the higher education costs are becoming very, very unaffordable, it's very shooting up. Go to IIMs and IITs costs, many people are unable to afford those expenditure. So what is the ROI? How much the amount that I am spending? So what I'm going to get as a return out of it. And then, as we had stated in the previous slide I was talking about, so how do we manage the aspirations of a learner? So these particular 4 questions which we need to answer, and if we are able to answer them, which means we are talking about learning continuity. How? We'll just come back. Now let us see this. I mean, in whenever we are there in our frame, we are seeing, we all of us are learner in the sum or the down. So we have created, it's one of my models actually. I am not using a mathematical model here. We are all using our intuitive model. So if we want to track the engagement vis-a-vis time, so in this complete frame, the student or the learner is placed. So if I see that initially, if we are talking about that high, the time is very less and the engagement is low, so we get induced learners. We try to force upon things on them. And if we put them huge content with a less period of time, we create rote learners, those who try to cram things, mug up. And then if we are trying to give content less and a lot of time is given, so that's a lot of chalk and talk method, the sage on the stage kind of models. We are creating traditional classroom, which mostly we are in, but the objective is to have matured learners. Now from the spectrum, from the top, if you see, the one end is data and the second, the last end is about design thinking. So essentially design thinking, which is in the domain of learning, which has surfaced, again it has been taken from the concept of from the production cycle, where we are having shorter cycle runs. So design thinking in the space of learning has been seen as an approach to create students, to make them think. And the first thing that starts in design thinking is empathy. So therefore, we do not make learning as an obvious thing for the students. It may so happen that the learner could be, they do have a differentiation. Two learners cannot be equal. Their choice, their strength, their opportunity, all vary. So design thinking approach starts with their empathy, and then it is able to define a problem. Now, how many times we actually have bothered to know how the students are learning? This is a very fundamental question. Now, if I'm addressing a class of 60 or maybe 40 or 15, so is it actually possible for a teacher to concentrate on each and every student and map their progression? It may so happen that one student is being given a learning prescription, a dose of content, and the other also is given the same, but the reflections of learning is different. Now there are so many learning theories are there, like constructivist theory, connectivism theory. So in every theory, it talks about one simple aspect. In tertiary education particularly, if there is lack of maturity in the class, there will be differentiated learning gain. I repeat this word, differentiated learning gain. Why? Because the processing ability, the ideate option, if I'm teaching something to a student and the student is unable to grasp it, so they eventually need to be encouraged to ideate, problem solve, prototype, test and running. These are the steps in design thinking. So eventually the objective will always be to start from the data-driven approach. So we give them content, expose them to media. There's a very wonderful theory, media richness theory, which shows that if you are using the high content media, content rich classrooms essentially have a better output, because the media rich, the contents which are rich in media in terms of audio, video, they provide better visibility to the content. And from starting from there, we have to move towards the other side of the spectrum, which is design thinking. That means I'm getting a matured learner who is actually able to interpret things, so come out of his own shell and not just a rote learner or an induced learner. You don't have to force. Now, this is actually having the basic essence of learning continuity. So, the maturity in learner, the constructivist theory, John Dewey, 1933, is suggested that there is equal responsibility of a student in tertiary education in the class as is lying on the teacher. So therefore, the students, they have to respond and they have to develop ideas more effectively so that they can concentrate and they can, able to apply those which have been taught. Now, in any institution, I'm particularly restricting to Indian institutions, so there are certain challenges. Now, we are talking about, you make question, because many times when I go for lecturing, people question that you talk about having the mature learners, because the demography is such that in this great country that it varies from place institution to institution. But overtly, I'm not being specific, but I'm just being in a generic frame. I'm trying to suggest some challenges the institutions are facing. It may so happen your institution is not facing all, but some of them are facing, but this is very generic. Now, one thing is very particular, is cohort learning. So cohort learning means a small group. So in higher education sector, the small group is being exposed in research, in terms of any policy making. So wherever we are doing such kind of exercises, we are seeing there's a small cohort is being exercised. Fixed education structure. So fixed education structure, you have a timetable to follow, and I'm not criticizing them. I'm saying what are there. It's a challenge. The fixed timetable. Let's say right now is the time to do mathematics, but right now I do not feel like doing so. So in this context, I'll request all of you to go to YouTube and listen to a lecture by Steve Jobs, Connecting Dots. He has, I advise this lecture to all my students, and I think those who have listened to it, they must have seen one thing. Steve Jobs learned computer science and calligraphy in Stanford in both the same single point in time. So we do not have this kind of flexibility as on date. So there's a structure, is fixed routine. Timetable is there. If you are doing engineering, courses are fixed. If you are doing management, courses are fixed. So if somebody has got some other intuitive interest in pursuing some other program, perhaps the rules, regulations are not in his favor. Then the single pace of learning, as the class moves, that I think many of us have felt it in different way, that there are some intelligent students, there are some slow learners in the class, but since we have to complete the syllabus, we have to move in a specific direction. And then we are having much emphasis is given on face-to-face dissemination. Many of our professor colleagues would be there who would feel that rather than going online where I cannot see and I do not know when the video is shut off, I am not sure the students is listening to me or not, but I feel comfortable when I'm talking to somebody, face to face, one-on-one. I can see their expressions, I can connect with them directly. So that's again, I feel that's a challenge. Then the limited counseling system is there. So in limited counseling system, what is happening, if a student needs to switch, we cannot allow them. Exit options aren't there. If I'm feeling after completion of one program, one course, I do not want to continue, rather I want to switch to some other program, maybe my interest has shifted, I cannot go there. And then the knowledge basically gets restricted in the physical labs, making it the exclusive domain of the university. This is one big challenge, but I could see in this pandemic situation, I think Calcutta University is one of the universities who had opened its doors for the others. I think Amlan can correct me, and this is one of the exercises which should have been done much before, but somehow it was done recently. So going ahead with this, we have the learning continuity coming. So we have created the spectra. We have seen where our students are. We have seen the problems the institutional teaching is facing. So we have seen the prime, the expectation from a student, the maturity level from a student, and then we are trying to suggest the solutions, how it is going to evolve and help the basic domain of learning. The first one, it talks about the personalized and adaptive learning encouraging cognitive flexibility. So personalized learning in a classroom, the learning continuity can take place only when the personalized and adaptive learning happens. So adaptive learning primarily talks about, the encouraging the psychological, your mental maturity frame has to evolve. So that can only evolve when you are actually in a group, when you are giving time to yourself. If you are constantly being fed, if you are not able to adapt to a situation, today a problem is given, and the very minimum time I have seen, the people are actually trying to exercise their own right and resolve it. But now, in learning continuity can happen. Usually, the philosophy in India says that the moment you exit through the doors of your college, your learning stops. Though we try to learn, through socially mingling with people, through peers and all, but then that learning has not been institutionalized as on date. So we say, I see many of our friends from the industry have said that what they teach you in the B schools are not worthy to be practiced in the industry. So now this is the basic challenge, because the students have stopped learning. Now he has to learn unlearning. So there are a lot of concepts and the contradictions are there in learning, unlearning, relearning. So I'm not getting into that. But what is the biggest emphasis on learning continuity is that personalized and adaptive learning. That means if a situation is changing, let's say I learned a DBMS. So when I learned DBMS, it was I think Oracle 6 point something there. So later I became an Oracle DBA. That was 8, and 8 was never taught to me. But then I had to adapt to a situation because I was working in some company and learned it. So now this is what I'm trying to talk about. This is an induced phase of learning, but over a period of time, the students becomes mature and they try to apply their own cognition and evolve with the period of time. So the maturity is there. The students never stops learning. The second one is a very interesting but one size fits all program. So if you have acquired a basic degree, so what is the need for you to enroll yourself to something which is you don't require them? So likewise, we are seeing short-term courses where there are many good institutions are offering short-term courses. Now it is coming in SWAYAM platform, online platform, one particular module that you can do. You don't have to do a 6 months or 1 year program having 4 or 6 papers. Today you can have only single paper done and you get certification for that. So that is one kind of a situation gradually evolving, but then again it will take its own sweet time to be accepted. Fine. The social acceptance is a very big challenge as on date today. Now next one is about the critical thinking approach, which is again a cognitive aspect. So how critical you are in your thought process, that will eventually determine your growth trajectory in the industry or wherever you are operating. So your ability to interpret, you are not dependent on anybody to feed you certain things, rather you are able to interpret your own idea and you evolve, you extend the idea. That is the reason the fundamental ability of a researcher, as we say, same thing is needed in the industry. To do research, you don't have to be there in the, an academic institution. Rather, you could be there in the, in any, in your classroom also it can commence. Now coming back to this part, how do you ensure? So first step is about having a learning management system. So data, I like data, because so until and unless you have data in your hands, you are actually, pelting stone in the darkness. So in primarily an LMS and ERP in academic institutions, in many good institutions they have done, but again, there are a lot of institutions in India as on date, they have not been able to create it. They have not been able to create that kind of infrastructure. So an LMS, learning management system for content sharing, is a very powerful tool to capture the students' engagement. If you remember, we have seen in the previous model which I was talking about, we have seen active engagement. So there is active engagement, there is contrary to that, there is a passive engagement where students actually, or the learner, they kind of lose interest. in your content which you are sharing. So therefore, for an LMS, you can have different academic interventions, giving them assignments, tests and all, and continuously monitor their performance. And through an enterprise application, you can monitor their performance, their attendance. So these two applications, they can combine and they can create a separate breed which is called LCMS, Learning Content Management System. So, in my institution, I have done it. So I can see, I can actually track that how many times if a student walks up to me and says, sir, I didn't understand that. So I can track from this element that how many times he has actually, gone through the content that has been shared. So they may be prescribed, first you read it, then you come back. So now I have some bit of data to find out that whether is the student was actively engaged with the content or not. And for ERP, you can always track the student's behavior. Second one is about assessment, continuous online assessment. So it is not an one of its kind. It is like a continuous round the year you can assess your student and you can actually, map whether it is growing, because it is very difficult to work with pen and paper. But online applications, they give you constant monitoring of your students' performance. And then we have the most powerful part, which is ubiquitous learning. So learning doesn't stop. I think few days back I wrote an article there. I said that education institutions, even the budgetary constraint we have in India, only 4% spend on education. But then, or whereas in China or in US, it goes up to 7 to 8% of their GDP. Even their GDP is very much higher than us. Obviously, expenditure is more. Here, I do not know whether you have noticed or not. In case of any situation, be it any natural calamity or any weather frowning somewhere, or if some problem happens or election happens, the first thing that stops is the schools. And with school, learning stops, because students cannot go to the school, so teacher cannot teach them. So now ubiquitous learning talks about one simple philosophy: learning mustn't stop. It's primarily, I'm talking about online learning. So there are a lot of critics are there who are saying that there are a lot of health exposures are there, a lot of challenges are there, the gaps do create, social distancing automatically is created through this online learning. But even then, one thing is ensured: the students remain connected to the content. Right now, what is happening, the classes that are being held online, they are employed to make the student connected. Even what I am doing today, this could have been done in a physical form also. But now what we are trying to do, we are trying to create a empathetic network of learning where the students can constantly be given the learning input, and that ubiquity is effervescent. It's effervescent. It is there. Students are learning. So now this is the three important aspects. There are many more. I'm just restricting it to three. So first, we need to track, we need to assess, and we need to provide. So these three, if we can, so perhaps we are able to contain the learning challenges to some extent. Any questions so far? I mean, if anyone has any question, they can ask, or we'll take them at the end.
We will take them at the end.
Okay, great. Fine. Now, I'll just come to another important aspect. So teaching, should be less didactic. Now, didactic teaching means the traditional teaching. No, I'm not criticizing the professional teachers or the teachers who taught us. Didactic teaching identifies with the fact that less of technology is involved. So therefore, more of an history is involved. I mean, experiential teaching is one aspect of it, but then didactic teaching is a traditional method of teaching. So then Alison King came up with an idea of flipped classroom, where we have a lot of from outside in to inside out kind of a learning mechanism, where the learning can take place outside the classroom as well, so that your smart devices are there to connect. Now here I'll take a small pause and spend 1 minute on that, because I am getting a lot of criticism from people who I mean say that I am against some group of students who do not have access to computers staying in the remote areas. So the existence of digital divide, even in the different platforms also people are criticizing. Yes, they're there. So I'm not saying that they all Indian students can access a computer. But understand one thing, when mobile telephony came to India, are we not using mobile phones today? So when it came to India, so initially did everybody had a mobile phone the same day? I don't think so. It took some time. But then it came, it did not leave the land of India. When online payment system came, digital payment systems came, did it take off in the first shot? No. There was some impetus to it, and then gradually it is gaining momentum. So therefore, it is a challenge, but then it has got a lot of positive aspects to it. Because had it not been so, the people who are taking the benefit of online or digital or flipped classroom model would have shunned it in the long back. No, it is not. Even the government is asking for it. Let us go ahead and do it, because it has given a lot of benefits. Yeah, the divide would be there. People would be there who would not be having access right now. But over a period of time, I'm sure mechanisms would develop. Policymakers would think about it. And I have written extensively for the government to create an infrastructure. First, the way the telephone towers were erected, the same way I guess the network bandwidth, they need to be created. Central universities are provided with the MHRD network. Similarly, in the rural, remote areas, things are going to happen, are happening slowly. I mean, that we can all privy to those information. Now, this is one interesting fact. Yeah. Any question? I'm hearing your voice.
May I request the participants to stay on mute and turn off your camera, please?
Okay. So this is one interesting, I mean, the third point is a very interesting fact that I have been able to find, because I've been working in this field since 2003. So when I was doing my own research on e-learning, so people said, saying people, I mean the teachers, industry professionals, they were of the opinion that this is not going to be there. It is just like, and I'll say that it was, somebody told me even it is like Chitrahar. So earlier in DD there used to be a program. So people commented that this blended learning or casting the projection on the screen about a learning content.
Just a moment. May I request? Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So what was happening when I was projecting the content on the screen, people find it like a movie going on. If I'm showing them a video and then asking questions on that, maybe I'm doing a video case with them, people thought it's a movie going on. So perception was such that for the teachers, but students liked it. So they got a respite and they preferred that the technology augmentation should be there in their curriculum. So apart from plain black and white chalk and talk sage on the stage kind of a scenario, if the technological component, digital content could be blended to their existing curriculum, that can create a platform for them to learn. So they get some part as their role to exercise the maturity point I was about. So they can infer a lot of meaning out of which I may not be able to explain them the way they want. So a video or a text in digital form share a lot of content because it has got the repetition one. If I'm teaching something today and then if you ask me to repeat it again, I cannot be 100% bang on target. But then if a video you can play a number of times, is going to give you the same output, and the students, depending on learning ability, they can procure things that they want. So it is the research found output that there is a huge response from the students of tertiary education to have a blended form of learning, blended form of curriculum, and they expect the teachers to use them. This is what I'm sharing with you today. It's a research output. Now, in last year, we talked about an education grid. So I'm sharing this thing again. It's a study found, but this is not mine. So primarily we just captured from the lit review. So one hand, I'm trying to see the instructional delivery, and then the other hand, we are trying to see the amount of quantity of flexibility. So we are talking about education 4.0, but prior to that, let us understand how did all this come into the picture. So how did this education, 1, 2, 3, 4, how did it evolve actually? So primarily how it happened, the education 1.0, it was a very kind of a traditional setting where, the offline content was shared more and the rigid structure. Likewise, the schools we have today, offload, the schools have also gone online to some extent due to the smart classrooms, all those things. But primarily, even today, most of the Indian schools and colleges, they prefer education 1.0. Then education 2.0 came with intermittent use of technology. Education 3.0 started little use of blended content and they tried to augment it. And now we are at the realm of education 4.0 where there's a huge flexibility. I was talking about today, you go to Swam platform today, now 400 new courses have been launched yesterday. I think day before yesterday, I guess. So now you can register yourself for multiple courses and you can create a bouquet for yourself. And over a period of time, this is going to gain acceptance and people who will look for skills will prefer to hire those people rather than spending your time. So if I am, very logical question I'm raising today before this August gathering, that if I'm intelligent, if I'm smart, if I'm hardworking, and if I can conclude 20 papers in 1 year, why should I have to wait for 3 years to get a degree or 4 years to get a degree? Why can't we save on time? So these are the questions which are evolved with a period of time. That might not be the case for all, but at least those people who are comfortable, who are motivated in their own domain can exercise those rights. That is the reason education 4.0 right now is in the anvil. Now this is the one interesting research finding. Again, it's an intuitive model. The mathematical model, again, I am not sharing today. So if we see the evolution of learner autonomy, so the flexibility which I'm talking about, and the maturity part. So education 4.0, as we can see, has got the highest level of maturity. And then in 80s, we started off with the e-learning content. Those who were at that time having a television at home will be watching the UGC programs which came. Then we had the BBC, video cassettes. They were showing how to speak English and all. And from there we have virtual learning environment, personalized learning environment, self-learning environment. So there's educally, having a education 2.0 domain. Then blended learning came, and 3.0 actually talked about 3 important concepts. One is metacognition, second is comparative system, and third is meta literacy. So metacognition is very, intuitive psychological process where the learner thinks about its or his or her own thinking ability. It is a kind of regulated thought process, because for youth thoughts go random. So if you are able to regulate your thought process, if you can contain them within a specific scope or boundary, so perhaps you are evolving to be a matured learner. That's what metacognition talks about. And then meta literacy is about one's reflective domain of learning, because there's a theory called ART, affective reflective theory, which means that what kind of behavior I'm reflecting, it is dependent on the induction or the induced effect of the peer. So what I am trying to think, what I am trying to know, so do I know that exactly the same thing? So it's the self-realization part. So meta literacy has grown beyond, it's about your comprehension ability of a particular subject, particular thing. So now if you are able to connect with the metacognition and meta literacy, the level of maturity shoots up. And remember, these two, meta literacy and metacognition concepts, they all are practiced within the framework of agile methodology, which one of them is manifested by complex adaptive system. Because learning, as we have discussed previously, is a non-linear approach. Every student does not learn same subject, same point of time with same learning gain. Therefore, it is worked within a framework of a complex adaptive system where we have different stakeholders, institution, teachers, library, administration. They all play a pivotal role in shaping the learning, making effective. It may so happen some institutions are benefited due to the exposure of contents they do have. Some institutions do have better teachers, some institutions have better library equipment. So now some institutions have laboratory equipment, the funding some institutions have. So now this is a very complex setup, and that makes the outcome of learning different at different interval of time. And that essentially takes us to the 4.0 domain, where we are actually welcoming the non-traditional students. I said that Education 4.0 is here to stay because the maximum autonomy comes from the fact that there is a group, or the evolution of student domain is happening, where there are students who are non-traditional, so they decide what to study, when to study, how to study. And once I'm doing it, so if I'm able to track them, so what I'm getting is a humongous data set about my students' behavior. I'm getting their patterns, how are they learning. I'm getting huge variety of students and their profiles, and I'm having this data set unstructured, all responses. So I'm usually using the online or learning analytics tool to measure one students, and we are using mixed method approach, content analysis, all approaches to find out how my students are learning, how they are actually evolving, the maturity part. Now, these all data sets at what we have discussed just now, they all come from the realm of this entire space of higher education. Now you can see that this is the overall framework or ecosystem of higher education, where a student has to live within the boundaries of real-time exposure, experiential learning, university, society. All of them, they are jumbled up, and they are moving. They are creating their individual forces on students, and they have to work in that environment. So this is the higher education ecosystem right now. It is no more just a college or industry. So there are many other stakeholders, many other factors that contribute to the learning, because that was a predominantly old school of thought that we only had the books, the syllabus, the exams, and the degree. No, it has changed, and it has changed to that extent that that technology intervention, experiential learning, industry focus, peer group learning, and name it, lot of other projectiles are contributing in making the situation more complex. Now coming back to the non-traditional student, what do we have a non-traditional student? So non-traditional students actually have come into the picture because industries nowadays demand for skill. I have seen students, even after completion of BTech, they go for a .NET coaching. Even after completion of their MBA, they go for a special financial analytics program. So now that means there is a skill requirement. So if I am having that particular skill requirement, so I can always go ahead and pick up those courses and become non-traditional, so that I don't have to visit a particular college. And then these are affordable. Instead of spending a huge sum on a particular program, 2 years, 3 years with a locking period, I can have a quick return on investment by having 1 or 2 courses, and in my own choice, as my own requirement, I can go ahead and do that. So there are multiple times, multiple formats are there. I can try, I can have weekend, I can have daily. So there is no fixed learning routine is available. And then I am getting the career counseling support. Why I am sharing this thing? Because you have to understand, you will see in your vicinity, you will look around, you will find these numbers are only increasing. Now we have, in school system, in college, a lot of training institutes are there who are only giving a capsule programs which are required for the job. Rest the students automatically will pick up. So this is the gradual number which is thick and fast increasing. So now one important part, the cycle time has been reduced significantly. So we have the agile concept, the agility part, which says that we have shorter cycle time. So in shorter cycle time, I can reiterate my learning prescriptions as we have talked in design thinking. So I can design a prototype, a learning capsule, a program, and if I test it, if it's accepted, I can rerun it. Otherwise, I'll withdraw it, change it. I can make all sorts of assumptions and changes into it. And therefore, I'll start with a specific focus and will create a hands-on exposure and will constantly iterate with evidence. If it is positive, I go on rolling. If not, I'll withdraw. So output is going to be improved. So earlier it used to be their educational system that once a syllabus is made, it is going to run for 2 to 3 years. Private institutions change it frequently. For government institutions, minimum 3 years or 4 years syllabus has to run. So by that time, industry has changed multifold. But now with such, Education 4.0 in the radar, with the non-traditional students are in the picture, with the agile systems are in place, there are courses which are constantly changing. Even the Swayam platform, you will see if the course does not find a taker, it is not repeated. Only those courses with a strong feedback, these courses are repeated. So this is, which I am trying to indicate here, that situation is changing. Now, next I'll take how do I get to the bottom of it. So primarily what I'm trying to understand from my learning analytics tool is that how and when a student is going to drop out. I do not know whether in your institutions you have dropouts, but in many government institutions are there, even in IIMs also, IITs also, they do have a dropout situation. So can there be any indicator alert systems which could have raised before the students actually drops out? Can the student be counseled back? Can the students be helped with some bit of a counseling? Stop a talent being wasted? Now I can do it only when I have the live statistics of the learners, how they are doing. So at any point of time I see that the performance graph is declining, I can straight away escalate that matter. And then finally, I can always check my individual progress. So what I'm trying to do in the process of mapping the continuity of learning, so from the day one a student is registered and the day last when he has to exit with a degree, I can have the complete progression map. And if I am able to map his progression, I can also manage his aspiration or her aspiration. That means, look, you have been a good student, but you lack in certain qualities. Therefore, a possible career option for you would be A, B, and C. So if you are lacking in math, if you are lacking in communication, if you are lacking in finance, so perhaps there are different career options before you. So therefore, the outcome-based learning. So actually, what we are creating, we are churning out. We call them as rote learners. They do not contribute. So we are actually, adding up disguised unemployment to the economy. But using learning analytics, we are actually trying to measure it up that how far the students are going. You don't have to do anything. It's not a manual. The systems are going to give you the alert. So automatically a lot of technical tools are there, a lot of tools are there with which we can map it and track each and every student individually. So now what kind of systems that we possibly, or what kind of data we need to access? What is academic alert systems are there? So about the grades, about the examination scores. Then we have the student advisory. So depending on the student's performance, the BI tool can advise the students for taking up a remedial course or maybe shift it to a different program. So there are different tools and techniques that are available. Then it gives a complete visualization of students' results. That look, whatever you have performed, so I can map it. I can see that from day one, first semester to the last semester, to the first day of the program, to last day of the program, first assignment to the last assignment, first test to the last test, what all we have done is clearly before us, and it gives you the performance graph along with the competitor analysis. So in comparison with your classmates, how far you have fared, that also is visible. So in a way, I am actually creating a visual impact of a student's performance for complete course, and I can go on keeping different milestones to check if the students need some advisory. And then looking at the student's behavior, I can go for cognitive tutoring. I can go for counseling. I can go for mentoring the students. Look, you are very good in creative thinking. Why don't you choose a career option like that? Why don't you are very good at numericals. Why don't you take up some mathematical, applications as your career option? So likewise, the visibility of my information through the analytic tool is very powerful for us to know how we are sharing, how we are creating it. So now this education 4.0 primarily, I have used, the maximum number of logos I could get here. I'm not particularly biased. Like Moodle is there. So in education 4.0, as we have very clearly said, it creates a lot of data, learner produced data. So I need to capture them. I need to take a stock of those data and create an output and share it with the people so that I get a comprehensive idea about my students' performance. So these are some of the applications. Those who are already using it, fine. There are many I cannot pick. Primarily the Microsoft Team and Google Meet is not an LMS though, but still you can record, so you can have the video data using AR/VR technique. You can monitor the students' performance. Hence I kept it. But primarily the LMS platform is being catered by Moodle, Talent LMS, Canvas, Google Classroom. So those applications are there to provide you the right and real-time information so that the non-traditional students primarily get the benefit of being there. They can be there, they can be taught on the go. So ubiquitous computing is one important aspect towards achieving the objective of Education 4.0. So with this, I conclude here. So any questions you have, I'm welcome. And I hope I'm within time, I guess.
Thank you, Dr. Debarshi. We couldn't have had any better start to our webinar series. This was fabulous, and lots of wonderful feedbacks are pouring in for you. So hearty congratulations on doing a great job. You have very well covered change in teaching paradigm from data to data design thinking. You have explained learners metrics also, then flipped classroom, and evaluation and evolution in learning space. So everything was explained in wonderful way. And they say, like earlier they used to say, like if you change, there is a risk associated with it. But now it's a time when it is like, if you do not change, there's lots of risk associated. So education 4.0 is the future, and we are there. Amlan, do you have few questions for Dr. Debarshi?
Yeah, thank you for this presentation.
Yeah,
So I have a couple of questions.
please.
So yeah, so what I want to
Hello, yeah.
Yeah, so the first question is, that means, as you told that LMS, can you listen to me? Yeah. So as you told that LMS and Education 4.0 is going to prevail, and we should look forward to it. What I also feel that now universities and institutes should have a policy such that they have a continued connectivity with the society. Okay, it is not that the student just comes and goes for takes the course and gets the certificate, because now there is the evolving educational scenario. So a student has to get touch with the knowledge ecosystem, with the LMS platform throughout the professional career. Okay, exactly. So what type of policy should university and institutes take in this direction? Okay, and secondly, I want to tell that there is a local need of skill, and there is a global need of skills. And when we try to define a curriculum in our university or institute, that is the challenge we face. So what is your opinion that what should be the way the universities or institutes should handle the local challenge and the local requirement as well as the global requirement in framing their curriculum?
Okay, these two questions are very interesting and question. But first of all, I'll like to thank Amlan for having me here. I forgot to thank you for bringing me here. So it's a great opportunity talking to the August gathering here. Now coming back to the question number one about this policy. Now before I answer this question, I'll just give you my experience. So when I was doing my PhD on e-learning, people laughed at me. When I said blended learning, people still laughed at me. When I said Education 4.0, people still laughed at me. That happened within a span of 10 years. But then somewhere, some people were of the belief that this existing learning mechanism is not giving the right kind of dividend. Why? If there is a BTech, there is a course outcome. Now possibly you have seen that UGC has clearly mandated that they have to alter their syllabus with a specific outcome oriented structure. That means if I'm teaching subject A, what will be the outcome? So after completion of the student, what the student is expected to do, and with mapping of each chapter as ACSB guideline. So now for the policy level, it was not there. Earlier, people used to, I mean, I'm so sorry, I'm going on record, but I'm mixed with it. I'm saying that people used to frame the syllabus as per convenience. Once the syllabus is made ready, and then it used to get multiple alterations. But now, policy level wise, we have to see what we expect the students to perform. So if there is a definite outcome related, so if I'm teaching them computer science, so they should be able to do coding, they should be able to create an architecture. So if that is not happening, that means I have to go and look back what kind of policy failures must have happened. So now this is the policy level requirement needs to be done with actionable intelligence, that I am doing this curriculum, I am working on this particular structure. So this program will help the students do this thing. So accordingly, the students need to be told become responsible, because it's a two-way theory. That is something what we have to understand. It is not only the teacher and teacher. Teacher will come and deliver. Students have to understand, acquire knowledge and implement it. So this is a policy level gap that is existing, and it has been existed since, I mean, time immemorial. But now of late, the government also has taken, I guess those who are in the policy level in the respective institutions, you have to make sure that if you are teaching subject A, so the outcome of subject A is realized by the students. The moment we do it for each subject, you will see the complete learning space is going to evolve. Second question about the skills. The skills, the universities should plan that they should launch those courses which is aimed toward developing a particular skill. So what is my requirement? So if I am looking for an, a salesman, so I should prepare a curriculum which will, after completion, people will give me a proper good salesman. So my filtration process of selection of students would be like that. So content would be like that, and students would be able to create that. So this is the kind of outcome. It is only in the mindset. The infrastructure government can create, but it is the policymakers have to mandate what is they expect out of it. If I am taking some vegetables, I'm trying to cook a particular dish. So the expected outcome is the particular dish for which the vegetables have been bought and used for. If we end up cooking something, if you burn it cooking, so perhaps we have not able to achieve it. This is a very simple analogy I can give here. So we are trying to make an MBA or a BTech. So what is the objective? What we want the students to do? A civil engineering student doing, should be doing civil work, isn't it? It's a very straight jacket. But if it is not happening, so accordingly we need to think what is not there. Or an MBA is going for some private tuition. Now we need to think about what should be done. What is the thing that is troubling? What is the apple of discord? So now this is something at the skill level we have to come down, and we have to clearly identify the skill blocks we want the students to have to a particular program. And then only we can achieve the basic fundamental idea about education. Do I answer your question, Amlan?
Yeah, you are perfect. You are perfect. Thank you, Debarshi, for the excellent answer and excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Debarshi, again for answering these questions. Thank you, listeners, participants, for being there. In this series, the next event is on 26th of May, which is Tuesday, from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. and it is on data science and analytics, application and opportunity by Kranti. She is a senior manager, university relations in IBM. So please be there, and it is going to be very interesting for all of us, because data scientists are supposed to be champions of the future. So let's be there and hear it out from her. Another event which is coming next year is the flagship conference of Society for Data Science, which is International Conference on Data Management, Analytics and Innovation. And it is scheduled from 15th to 17th January 2021 in Kolkata. And the best part of this conference is, like, setting goes in AISC series of Springer, which is indexed in Scopus as well as Web of Science. So some of you, if you are interested in writing, do submit your paper to our conference and get it cited properly. Right? Thank you. See you soon.
One more thing, Neha, the registration for that Kranti's webinar is required if they are not done.
Yeah, as Dr. Goze has mentioned, you all need to register. We need to register separately for each webinar. So please do register. The links are there already shared with you. In case if you need any additional information, do reach out to all of us. Thank you so much. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks to all of you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.